Well, good morning everyone and welcome to Nazareth Contemplative Prayer. Today here from Chiswick House and Gardens, which I've been discovering. These are amazing gardens that were originally designed by the 3rd Earl of Burlington. Let's begin with a prayer. Lord God, our Heavenly Father, you have created a world for us that astonishes in the midst of this second lockdown, in the midst of a time of uncertainty. Lord, open our eyes to the wonder of the world in which we live. Help us to see again, to smell again, to taste again, to touch again the things of God, and open our eyes to the history of so much that we take for granted. Be present with us on this walk today. Be present with the Nazareth community. Bless all those new companions who've joined Nazareth last Monday. And may all of us who are seeking God in this time find a stillness and a sense of his presence in all things. So, the Earl of Burlington created these gardens, and many people see him as the kind of the original inventor of the English landscape garden, or the first of the English landscape garden. He was obviously very influenced by classical ideas. He went on a great tour of Italy, and here we have the kind of the main lawn with these wonderful Grecian urns. And these classical sculptures sort of framing his garden. I love this lion here. I wonder whether the sculptor had ever seen a real lion, because it does look a little bit, how should we say, a bit hungry. And these senators, sort of guarding custodians of the Earl of Burlington's garden. So dignified, so statesmanlike, like sentinels watching over his lawn. Let's hope our modern day politicians can behave with similar dignity. I suppose that the Roman senators didn't behave with that much dignity. You only have to watch Julius Caesar to realise that things also went wrong there. Oh, there's another one of our beautiful lions, a female lioness there. Also looking as though they're in need of a good meal, more like a dog than a lion. And then we have these wonderful hedges that sort of lead to the vanishing point in all different directions. This is called the Goose's Foot, leading us off to in various directions from this one point. So let's follow one of the directions together. One of the wonderful things about doing these contemplative walks is it's helping me to see again and to discover again all that's been left to us, if you like. You know, these 18th century figures were great custodians. What they created then lives on now, and we too are custodians. We're custodians, we're stewards of our world. I wonder what we're going to hand on to future generations. Here we are. This is called the Ionic Temple and Amphitheatre Pond. I've been reading all about the Earl of Burlington. He was very influenced by classical ideas. He wanted to create a kind of natural environment, a new way of creating a garden which was not sort of confined and formal, but was full of variety. And so these gardens are sort of populated by temples and sculptures and follies. Lakes and rolling lawns set against groves of trees, opening up vistas, picturesque bridges, classical temples. There was a sense that the landscape was idyllic, it was pastoral, it was a place of comfort and of healing. And these landscapes have been left for us. Of course, these great landscape gardeners carried on. So we had people like William Kent, who actually was worked very closely with the Earl of Burlington on these landscapes. And then obviously people like Capability Brown, the next generation, and John Nash, who designed St James's Park and my house. But here we go, down into the garden here. Look at the vista opening up. This is the idea that you have a foreground, a middle ground and a background, and the whole garden opens up and becomes almost like a picture. And of course these gardens were very much influenced by artists, landscape artists, people like Poussin. Look at the colours here, look at the reds of autumn. The whole of the grass seems to be sort of covered almost by this beautiful red dust of the tree. And then you're looking across, these began as canals, and then the canal became lakes and ponds and much more naturalistic. The idea was that the formal should give way into the more informal, and then into the wild and the mysterious, and that every corner you go round you should discover something new. And I suppose that's a bit like our prayer or our spirituality, always looking beyond. Here we have one of those sort of beautiful classical bridges. And look at the heron. I love the way the people of Chiswick come to this garden. It's very much a public garden. I came here yesterday and it really is the garden of the people. They in the creation of the garden, they insisted, people of Chiswick insisted when it was taken over by English heritage, that it should still be open and that people would be allowed to come and walk their dogs here. So although it's a kind of quite a beautiful formal garden, it's also a very public garden. That said, there are a lot of designer dogs because this is Chiswick after all. I can't get out. Oh, I can get out this gate. It's a very grey morning. We've got aeroplanes flying low overhead. I think there would be more aeroplanes if there wasn't a lockdown, but this is the flight path to Heathrow Airport, so you will hear plenty of planes. And we've got, you see, this formal garden, but also a wildness as well, opening up into these sort of paths that take you off into the undergrowth. And there is my squirrel, who's been following me everywhere on all of these walks. He's here today as well, just climbing the tree. I hope you can see him there. So we've got this sort of classical formality, but we've also got the wildness as well. And it's creating this sort of variety that was the work of these great landscape gardeners. But of course, as people like the Earl of Burlington realised, the greatest architect of all was God. So in a way, all these gardens are trying to become a theatre for God's creation. And it really is a theatre of creation. Look at the view down there, the splashing of the ducks being fed there by a little boy who's throwing them pieces of bread. Well, at least his mother is. This theatre of God's creation. And I know I'm always saying this, but look at the colour there. Look at the colour, almost smell the colour. And I hope you can experience the wonder of those reflections. Because the thing about water is it's not only water, it's not only a wonderful substance in its own right, but it also reflects all that's above it. The light, the colour, the rising of the sun, the setting of the sun, everything is reflected in the water. And also, it of course becomes the home of all these birds and wildlife. And many of these trees, I was hearing yesterday from Roseanne Townsend, who lives near here, many of the trees here are imported trees from the Americas, because of course when they were creating these gardens it became very popular to bring across trees, exotic trees from the Americas. When I arrived here about 7 o'clock. It was completely quiet. But now the Chiswick neighbourhood is beginning to fill the park, just as they should, because this is really, of course, a people's park. again, look at these autumnal colours. I came here yesterday and I suddenly was so aware that I'm 62 years old, and it's almost like you spend your life working and busy and doing things and so many activities and so much feelings that you've got to get things achieved. And yesterday I thought, this time, although it's a tough time and it's not been an easy time for anyone, but it's also a time in which I suddenly realised how wonderful things are. That you actually have to stop in order to realise the wonder of the world in which we live. That lovely little kid on his bicycle. He's got a lion's hat as well. Better not photograph. And you don't have to appreciate the world. You don't have to own it. I've often thought to myself, well, I haven't got any money, I haven't got any property, I haven't got any... But you don't have to be able to see the wonder of the... Look at that, look at that willow. Have you ever seen a more beautiful tree? That willow falling, weeping willow, falling into the water and reflected in the water. And behind it, the temple that we saw from the other side. Notice the way every pathway opens up a different view. Someone said to me the other day, I find autumn such a depressing time of year. I mean, how can you be depressed by that? I'm not being critical, but how can you be depressed by those colours? I was hearing on the radio how a short walk in nature or a short encounter with nature is deeply healing. They say that, not just sort of in the mind, but actually healing. It's apparently the breathing in of the oxygen, the smell of nature and the trees actually has a really restorative quality. I know we know this naturally, but I spent the day here yesterday and I came home in the evening almost filled up. I've been alone all day, but never did I feel lonely. I felt filled by it. Actually, that's a lie. I was with Roseanne Townsend, one of the Nazareth community, who lives here, and she sort of opened my eyes to some of the things in this place. And then I left her and I kind of just breathed it in for about 3 or 4 hours, just wandering. It's my day off on Friday, so it's my day for wandering. And here is some of the bird life and some of the reflections. We have mallards and Canada geese and little grebes, and there is a grey heron who I saw fishing yesterday, and a swan and a tufted duck and a moorhen and an Egyptian goose and a coot and a red-eared terrapin. And there are also aeroplanes flying across the sky. I don't know whether you can see that aeroplane, but there is an aeroplane there because I can hear it. Now this is a quintessential landscape where they try to create these sort of beautiful sweeping lawns that sort of swept down and to a lake. there you can see Chiswick House across the lawn, opening up this beautiful vista. It's become dog heaven here. I'm not quite sure if you can see the number of dogs which are enjoying the early morning walk with me. What a wonderful thing dogs are as well. What a wonderful friend. My brother Daniel has got this new puppy called Woody, and it really is love at first sight. The two of them are already inseparable. Daniel looks after my mother as well as doing a full-time job, and it's just wonderful to see this relationship building between him and this little dog called Woody, who is adorable. And of course, dogs also help us to get out of the house and into creation. They are healing as well. Now here we have, you may think all of this is a bit romantic, and it is. It is really a romantic vision, with its waterfalls and its lakes and its lawns. But William Kent, the landscape gardener designer, who was an artist and also a furniture maker, worked with Lord Burlington to create a more natural sense to the landscape, a kind of irregular lake, and try to create this sense of the naturalness of the world, breaking through the formal. Now this all may seem very sort of ordinary to us because we've grown up with it, but this was a completely new idea, that you could create these kind of pastoral idylls, these beautiful landscapes which brought peace and healing to the soul, and still do. I wonder what we're going to leave behind that's going to bring peace and healing to the soul of future generations. Look at our politics at the moment. What are we going to leave behind that will say, oh, this is what we want to gift to generations to come? So important that we preserve the wonder of this creation, isn't it? Now, this romantic view of the landscape was not just something that came from the Earl of Burlington. It was, of course, shared by poets, romantic poets, and by artists, and by dramatists. And someone who lived quite near to here was Alexander Pope, the poet. And he wrote this poem, an ode to solitude. Happy the man whose wish and care a few paternal acres bound, content to breathe his native air in his own ground, whose herds with milk, whose fields with bread, whose flocks supply him with attire, whose trees in summer yield him shade, in winter fire. Blessed who can unconcernedly find hours, days, and years slide soft away, in health of body, peace of mind, quiet by day, sound sleep by night, study and ease, together mixed, sweet recreation and innocence, which most us please, with meditation. Thus let me live unseen, unknown, thus unlamented let me die, steal from the world and not a stone tell where I lie. So Alexander Pope, who has this slight melancholy in his poetry, but also that idea of studying to be quiet, possibly quite a privileged quiet, because you have all the things that you need to sustain you, and yet a recognition that it's often the simplest things that sustain us most deeply, and that there is a quietness, a peacefulness that is the greatest of all treasures. Blessed are the poor in heart, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I remember I'm reading a book by Bill Bryson, and he said, isn't it wonderful when you get to an age where you don't want anything more, you don't want to buy any more material things. You kind of feel, I've got a jumper, that's all right. I've got the things I need. Now, obviously, these people, like the Earl of Burlington, had quite a lot of property. But you don't need property in order to find happiness. You need to follow the path that has a heart. You need the path with a heart. That's the secret. No, I don't own this property, but we have got this incredible privilege of enjoying these places. So I hope you're enjoying it with me. Blessed are the poor in heart, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall see God. We have the aeroplanes flying above us. There's the front of this classical house. Interesting for me because this is the same period where that St Martin in the Fields, our church at St Martin in the Fields, was built by James Gibbs, and and James Gibbs and the third Earl of Burlington were, of course, influenced by the same eclectic idea of trying to combine the classical with the old English architecture. And it's kind of this eclectic mix of styles. But apparently James Gibbs and the Earl of Burlington were rivals. The other interesting thing is some of you may have joined me for my walk in Bloomsbury, and the Earl of Burlington was also involved in the Foundling Hospital, as was Hogarth, who lives very near here as well. And I don't know whether many of you know Chiswick, but Chiswick also is very near the River Thames. So for those who've got a few more minutes to walk with me, I'm going to take you on a little walk down to the Thames so that you can see that this city, London, is really following the Thames all the way through. And in these walks we've been following the Thames and discovering this sort of artery to London, which all these beautiful places open up out of. Oh, blessed are the poor in heart, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. One of the lovely things for me about doing these meditations is that I'm not seen, I'm behind the camera, as it were. And so, in a way, the camera can become my eye, and it makes me look too and see all that's around me. And I think to see the things of God, there needs to be a way of getting out of the way ourselves. I remember when I lived in the Solomon Islands, the stars at night used to be absolutely fantastic. And one of the great star constellations is the Southern Cross. And I was always looking up into the sky to see the Southern Cross. And I remember one day asking those who were with me to show me the Southern Cross in the sky, and they all immediately pointed their hands up into the sky. So many hands were in front of my face that I couldn't see anything at all. And they said, can you see, Richard, can you see? And I said, well, I might be able to see if you took your hands out of the way. And I think that's the spiritual path that we all follow. To find the path with heart, we have to actually get out of the way. We have to learn to stand aside so that we can let God speak. So, from the sublime to the traffic, from the pastoral, idyllic landscape to Chiswick flyover, which is terrifying if you're a cyclist, and even more terrifying if you're a pedestrian. I find cyclists moving at speed quite the most terrifying things because you can't hear them. At least with cars, they've sort of learnt how to show a bit of respect for pedestrians, but cyclists seem to almost accelerate towards you. But anyway, I'm not going to start complaining about cyclists because I am a cyclist and I love cycling. I'm just trying to explain what it feels like after spending a couple of hours in that beautiful, beautiful garden, and now out in Chiswick flyover. Aeroplanes going overhead again. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. How can we find that freedom of spirit? There's a freedom of spirit that leads to the path with a heart, to rediscover God even in the traffic. But thank goodness I'm leaving the traffic behind, going down this beautiful little path that Roseanne showed to me yesterday. And what are we going to discover? The thing I love about England, London, or wherever you are, is that every little road leads somewhere. And you're never quite sure what you're going to discover around the corner. It's opening up landscapes, a bit like William Kent opens up that landscape for us. You go round a tree and then suddenly you see the vista. You go down a little path and then suddenly the window into creation. And the secret, not to stand in the way of the window, but let the window be the opening, the way through into the miracle of God. Ignatian spirituality continually tells us to look for the blessing. So what's the blessing of walking down this little road here? Well, the blessing for me is suddenly we've left all the noise of the traffic behind, and those walls on either side are just disclosing above the wall those incredible colours of autumn. And I'm taking you on a journey which you're not quite sure where you're going. Well, I'll tell you, we're going to a church called St. Nicholas's, and this church is the place where the painter Hogarth is buried. And just beyond the church is the River Thames. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons and daughters of God. Here we are, St. Nicholas's. More aeroplanes overhead. And isn't it wonderful that every neighbourhood has a church? Have you ever thought how wonderful that is? I mean, we all get very kind of protective of our own churches and territories, but isn't that one of the greatest strengths of the Church of England, that we have these churches, these sacred places, these places of prayer in every part of our land? You know, it doesn't need to be noisy. It doesn't need to be doing constant activities. It needs to be still. It needs to be sacred. It needs to open up for us the window of God's love. Now I think round here is Hogarth's grave. Good morning. All right. William Hogarth, 1697 to 1764, a contemporary of the Earl of Burlington who created that incredible house and garden. And this is the inscription that's written on his tomb. Here lies the body of William Hogarth. Farewell, great painter of mankind, who reached the noblest point of art, who pictured morals, charm the mind, and through the eye, correct the heart. If genius fire thee, reader, stay. If nature touch thee, drop a tear. If neither move thee, turn away, for Hogarth's honoured dust lies here. And through the eye correct the heart. If genius fire thee, stay. If nature touch thee, drop a tear. There, Hogarth, who famous Rake's Progress showed the humanity, but also the poverty and the corruption of the time. Very popular with modern contemporary artists like the Grayson Perry, who has also done his own Rake's Progress for the modern world. And Hogarth, of course, was a great patron of the Foundling Hospital, again in Bloomsbury. So there we are, there's the River Thames. Can't get down that way because it's too muddy. But also the runners and the dogs and everybody is out on this little path. And we're going to be able to see the Thames a bit better just from along here now. If you did have a lot of money and you wanted to buy one of the most beautiful locations in the world, these houses, I think, are pretty marvellous. So dream on. And apparently, I'm blaming Roseanne for my information here, but Michael Redgrave used to live in that house, and Vanessa Redgrave grew up in that house. Not bad, eh? Overlooking the Thames. Not only do you get to live in a beautiful house overlooking the Thames, but you also get your own little garden on the other side of the road that looks over the Thames. There. Would you like a garden like that? But as I was saying, you don't need any of those things to enjoy the wonder of it all, to enjoy the wonder of that willow tree, or to enjoy the wonder of that Thames. In fact, this is the great secret. The less you have, the more you can actually enjoy all, because you have a greater freedom. I remember when I came back from the Solomon Islands, I came back with 2 suitcases and I could move and go anywhere I wanted to do, anywhere in the world. And now if I tried to move, I'd have to have an articulated truck. So although possessions seem like wonderful things, they can also tie you down. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. And here we are. This is a nature reserve in the middle of the Thames. I was hoping to end my walk by taking you over to that little nature reserve, but probably the birds are very pleased we're not going over because we're not going to disturb them. Here is the Fuller's Brewery, where according to the notice on the wall you can get fresh beer. Don't think you can at COVID, although they did tell me yesterday when I was speaking to them that they are still carrying on their production to 80 different countries. And now this is an interesting little bit of information. This island here, Chiswick 8, is the home of the ancient withy bed, and they still encourage volunteers to come here and cut withies. And withies are the cane that they make baskets and weave baskets out of that withy. They also make those fences to keep back the tide from destroying the island. So some of these ancient crafts are still in operation, and yesterday when I went across to that island there were withy cutters, people cutting the withy in order to help make the defences for the island so that it doesn't get washed away by the incoming tide. So I'm going to leave you here. I hope you've enjoyed this morning's walk. It's been a wonderful pleasure to have me with you. It's wonderful to have this extended community across the country, across the world, people who are searching for God's healing of their own souls, healing of the soul of their community, healing of the soul of the nation, healing of the soul of the world. And I hope that in today's walk you just see how with that kind of stewardship, with that caretaking of the land, future generations are given such a gift. If we have faith in that past and we learn from the past, if we see the hope of the future, then we can live with love now. So may you all be filled with that love now, to see the works of God and to rejoice in them. Thank you for being with me. Next Saturday is just before Advent begins. Pray for you all, and pray that you too will breathe in the wonder of God this week and know God's presence with you. God bless.